What if the weight you carried wasn't just in your bags, but in the way they saw you? For years, I was nothing more than an afterthought, a suitcase they dragged through airports, stuffed into overhead bins, and forgotten until the next leg of the journey. My family parents, my older sister treated our annual vacations like a checklist: tickets, hotel, itinerary. Me, I was the last box to tick, the one they barely noticed until they needed something to complain about. Hurry up, Ellie, they'd snap, or don't lose the boarding passes again. I was 24, but to them, I was still the kid who spilled juice on the rental car seats a decade ago. This time, though, as we stood in the chaos of JFK's Terminal 4, I decided I was done being their baggage. I vanished before the plane even left the ground. It wasn't planned, not really. We were headed to Rome, a trip my mother had spent months obsessing over. She'd mapped out every cobblestone street, every museum, every gelato stop. My father nodded along, his eyes glued to his phone, while my sister, Claire, scrolled through her Instagram, already curating the perfect vacation aesthetic. I stood there, holding everyone's carry-ons, my own backpack sagging against my shoulder. The weight of it all, the bags, their expectations, my own silence pressed down until I couldn't breathe. When had I become invisible to them? When had I let myself become invisible? The boarding call crackled over the intercom, and my mother waved her hand, motioning for me to follow. "Ellie, keep up," she said without looking back. That's when I felt Ida's spark, sharp and electric, igniting something I'd buried long ago. I didn't want to be dragged along anymore. I didn't want to be the one who carried their burdens while they ignored mine. So I stepped back. One step, then two, until the crowd swallowed me. I slipped my phone into airplane mode, tucked my boarding pass into my pocket, and walked away. The airport was a maze of noise and motion, but for the first time, I felt free. I wandered past coffee shops and duty-free stores, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't getting on that plane. I found a quiet corner near a window, watching planes take off into the gray New York sky. My phone buzzed with missed calls: Claire, then my mother, then my father. I didn't answer. Let them think I was lost. Let them feel the weight of my absence. Hours passed, and I sat there, piecing together why I'd done it. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the one who never argued, who always said yes. Family trips were supposed to be bonding experiences, but they only showed me how little I mattered. My parents would bicker over directions, Claire would complain about the Wi-Fi, and I'd trail behind, carrying the extra bags, the water bottles, the guidebooks. They'd laugh at dinners, sharing stories, while I sat silently, my voice drowned out by their noise. I wasn't a person to them. I was a convenience, a shadow they expected to follow. But shadows can slip away. I realized that as I watched a plane climb higher, disappearing into the clouds. I didn't need their permission to exist. I didn't need their itinerary to find my own path. With the little money I had, I bought a bus ticket to a small town upstate, a place I'd read about in a book: a quiet village with apple orchards and old bookstores. It wasn't Rome, but it was mine. The bus ride was long, and doubt crept in. What was I doing? Would they even care? But as the city faded into rolling hills, I felt lighter. I checked into a cheap motel, my room smelling of pine and old carpet. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in years, I smiled. I was no one's luggage here. I was just Ellie, figuring out who she was when no one was telling her where to go. Days turned into weeks. I got a job at a local cafe, serving coffee to retirees and hikers. I rented a tiny apartment above a bookstore, the kind of place my family would have mocked as shabby. But it was home. I sent my parents a postcard, not an apology, just a note to say I was okay. I didn't know them more than that. One day, Claire showed up. She stood in the cafe, her designer sunglasses perched on her head, looking out of place among the mismatched tables. "We were worried," she said, but her voice carried more annoyance than concern. I poured her a coffee, my hands steady. "I'm not lost," I told her. "I'm here." She didn't understand, not really, but she left without dragging me back. I don't know if my family will ever see me as more than the girl who carried their bags. But I see myself now. I'm not invisible anymore, not to the regulars who know my name, not to the orchard owner who taught me to pick apples, not to the woman I'm becoming. I vanished that day in the airport, but I didn't disappear. I found myself, one step at a time, in a world that finally had room for me.